Hi, my name is Nick Nuttall. I'm the spokesperson and the head of communications for the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. We're headquartered in Bonn, in Germany, and we are the organization that is basically going to be running this huge meeting in Paris in December, which will hopefully deliver a brand new treaty on climate change. It's absolutely critical that we deal with climate change for the future of Latin America and for the future of all the people alive on that continent. Climate change is going to directly impact many of the features of the landscape of Latin America, from the glaciers in the high mountains melting away perhaps, to the agricultural productive base of food supplies, to issues of biodiversity and the wonderful wildlife, up to the Amazon rainforest, which is a huge water pump that drives weather systems and provides fresh water to literally millions and millions of people in Latin America. And Latin American youth and Latin American people are global citizens. We know that what happens in one part of the world in terms of climate impacts will also affect Latin America. We live in a world of huge food supply chains that stretch around the world. If there are more and more damage to those supply chains from extreme weather events linked with climate change, everyone will suffer, including in Latin America. So it's absolutely critical. But it's also critical how we deal with the issue of climate change. You know, if we can manage our forests better to be more resilient against the impacts, we can see more biodiversity. And biodiversity will be absolutely critical for many of the new inventions that we will see in the 21st century. The last few centuries were industrial centuries. This is going to be a biological century. So the biodiversity can have secrets to better food supplies, to new kinds of medicines, and all kinds of other interesting developments in the field of science. And also biodiversity underpins tourism, which is the world's biggest industry. So for Latin America, fighting climate change, delivering a more sustainable development path, and preserving the biodiversity in the forests will be very essential to people's prosperity and to their future lives and livelihoods. Paris, COP21 as they call it, could indeed be a very historic moment for everybody. This could be the climate agreement that puts the world on the path to actually dealing with the issue of global warming. What we hope for in Paris is an agreement. In fact, we're absolutely convinced we will get an agreement in Paris that involves every single nation on Earth, a universal agreement for the first time ever. We also want Paris to look into the future. We want Paris to put in place the pathways that by the second half of this century can bend the emissions down so low that we achieve a state known as climate neutrality, in which the emissions are so low they can be healthily absorbed by forests and by our oceans without causing any more damage. And Paris also has to put in place the finance. Many developing countries, including in Latin America, are being asked to grow their economies, overcome poverty, bring in telecommunications and new roads and other kinds of infrastructure at the same time as they're being impacted by climate change. So that's increasing the costs. And they're being asked to do this while reducing their need for fossil fuels. So the developed countries need to assist the developing countries with the finance they need to tackle all those challenges simultaneously, whilst moving them on a course to basically deal with climate change. So there must be finance in Paris, and we are hoping that the developed countries will give clear indications of $100 billion by 2020 to assist the developing world. And Paris must also recognize the extraordinary action undertaken right now by cities and by companies and by investors worldwide who are basically giving the confidence to many governments that climate change and dealing with climate change is doable. So we need to encourage those non-state actors as well, so that the whole world, governments, cities, corporations, investors, and citizens are all moving in the same direction towards a much better world. Education absolutely critical to the future, not just with climate change, but so many issues that we face on this world. When you look at a survey that we were involved in of something like 80 countries, from Fiji in the Pacific right across to Latin America, Brazil, for example, the United States, India, Europe, when this was conducted in June this year, and people were asked about climate change, and they were asked, what is the most powerful way of dealing with global warming? Their number one answer was education, mass education of the public. And that's going to be important just now, but also important well into the future, because we will have new science coming forward, new understandings. We'll have new challenges and new opportunities like renewable energies that maybe we haven't even thought of yet, which engineers can deliver, which scientists can provide. We need those people growing up as young people into, say, city leaders who can take cities to new ambition and new future. So education, learning, the role of youth as they take their role as citizens in their communities, can play an absolutely vital role in transforming this world from one of pollution and degradation to one of good management, of good possibilities, and a good prognosis for the future. There cannot be anything more exciting right now than dealing with climate change. I mean, it affects everything in the world. If we can all come together, if the young people in Latin America can hold hands with the young people in Africa and Europe and Asia and the Caribbean and the Pacific, and basically come together and say, this is what we want for the future, and now we're prepared to stand up and be counted and to do the things that will make a difference, I think this could be a very exciting moment. Many people are looking for the raison d'être in their life, for the reason for being on this planet, and there can be no greater reason than actually conserving planet Earth for this generation and the generations to come. So really get involved. You know, you can do a lot at home. You can do stuff in your universities, in your schools, in your communities. Become politically active. Vote for those people that have good green policies. There are so many opportunities for actually making a difference. Joining forces with people everywhere. I'm really looking forward to a completely different development path than the one that we've inherited from the past.